their sound quality for their tape used to be supposedly was so good. You could tell if their saliva remarks. You remember that one?
I'm gonna keep myself muted so people can hear me on this one.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, otherwise we'll get the feedback loop. Everyone in this room needs to stay muted. We're all getting picked up by the overhead mics.
I'm the only one. Oh, you guys. Okay. You're live. And we are live now. Okay, welcome everybody. It's nice to see you all, some in person and some on the screen. This is the June 3rd meeting of the Thurston Regional Planning Council. And I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we're going to start with introduction. So what I would love is when I read your jurisdiction, if you are the voting member representing your jurisdiction, if you could introduce yourself, that would be great. And then I will ask Mark to introduce staff who are present, and then we'll just check to see if we missed it. Sound good, Mark?
Sounds good.
Okay, great. Okay, Olympia, City of Olympia, sorry.
Art Gilman, Vice Chair and member of the City Council.
City of Lacey.
Robin Vasquez, she, her pronouns, Lacey.
Hi, Robin. City of Tumwater.
Good morning, Eileen Swarthout, Tumwater City Council.
Hi, Eileen. Thurston County. Is Matt here for Jerry, do we know? Okay, we'll
I
come
do
back
not know the answer.
and see about Thurston County. So Rainier.
Dennis McVeigh, City of Rainier.
Hi, Dennis.
And Matt. just-
Good morning.
For a moment.
Matt, is that you?
It is. Commissioner Edwards should be here shortly.
Okay, great. We'll come back and just check. How about City of Tenino?
John O'Callaghan representing a great city of Tenino.
Hi, John. And City of Yelp.
Joe DeBeno here.
Mayor DePinto. Nice to see you. How about Bucota? Okay, we'll come back to that one. Confederated Tribes of the Chehalis Reservation. How about Nisqually Indian Tribe? And North Thurston Public Schools. So Gretchen.
I did too.
Gretchen, did you introduce yourself? We didn't hear you.
Yes, Gretchen Maliska.
Okay. And Tumwater School District.
Mel Murray, Tumwater School District.
Hi, Mel. And I'm Hillary Seidel representing Olympia School District. I use she, her pronouns. And Intercity Transit.
Debbie Sullivan, representing Intercity Transit.
Hi, Debbie. How about Lot Clean Water Alliance?
Carolyn Cox, Lacey representative to Lot.
Hi, Carolyn. Port
Hi.
of Olympia.
Bob Ayel here for Port of Olympia.
Hi, Bob. PUD #1 of Thurston County. Check on that one. What about Thurston Conservation District? Lacey Fire District. Where's Rick?
Sylvia Roberts, here for Rick Killing.
Hello, Sylvia. Nice to see you.
Good morning.
How about Puget Sound Regional Council? And the Evergreen State College?
Scott Morgan for Evergreen.
Hi, Scott. And Thurston EDC. All right, and Timberland Regional Library. I see Cheryl.
Good morning, Cheryl Haywood, Timberland Regional Library.
Nice to see you, Cheryl. Did I miss any other voting members who joined us during introduction? Anyone else? Okay, Mark, do you want to go ahead and introduce staff?
I will, and I think I've got it. From Intercity Transit, we have Jessica Gould, Eric Phillips, and Ann Freeman Manzanares. From Thurston County, Matt Unzelman. From Tumwater, Mary Heather Ames. From Lacey, Martin Hoppy. And from Olympia, Joyce Phillips. And from TRPC, myself, I'm Mark Daly. Vina Tabbitt, Sarah Selstrom, Dorinda Merrill, Dave Reed, Karen Parkhurst, and Paul Brewster. And I believe I have everyone.
Great. Okay, so everyone's been introduced, and at this point, I just want to remind you, it's helpful if you can go ahead and rename yourself to add your jurisdiction and your title, just so folks know where you're coming from. We have some new members. That takes us to approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And any abstentions? Okay, great. The agenda is approved. That takes us to the consent calendar.
Chair, can I just confirm who seconded it? And if you could say your name when you make the motions, that would really be helpful for us.
Thank you for reminding us, Vina. So that was-
Apologies, Vina. That was
motion by
Robin
John.
from Lacey.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that takes us to the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So move, John Callahan.
And is there a second?
I'll second. This is Eileen Swarthout from Tumwater City Council.
Great, thank you.
It's been some.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, the consent calendar is, oh, any abstentions? Sorry. All right, the consent calendar is approved. That takes us to our other business. So we've got some great presentations on the dock. I would say unless the staff members presenting invite questions in the middle of the presentation, let's hold questions to the end. That's at the discretion of the presenter. And just as a reminder, I'm going to run an equitable queue. My goal is always to have as many members participate in the meeting as possible. So if you have already spoken on another issue and you've got your hand raised, but somebody who hasn't spoken yet has their hand raised as well, I might skip over you to prioritize the person who hasn't spoken yet, but we'll get to everybody who wants to talk about stuff. So,
Chair Seidel, just to make sure, did you mention public comment? We don't have anyone
Oh.
signed up, but just to make sure that we.
okay, I'm sorry. Yes, we don't have anyone signed up. I forgot not everybody gets that email. Thank you very much.
Yes.
There's no one signed up for public comment.
Thank you.
Apologies.
No
Thank you very
problem.
much, Mark. Okay, so yeah, so that does bring us to other business. And at this point, our first item is the contingency project list, which should be a lot of fun to learn about and talk about. And we're going to hand it off to Vina. I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, so good morning. So I'm Vina Tabbitt, the Deputy Director here at TRPC, and I'm here to talk about something we haven't talked about before. As many of you have heard from us, things with federal funding come as a big surprise sometimes, and this is one of those surprises, a good one. And so we're here to talk to you about an opportunity to put forward a list of projects for potential funding through Washington State Department of Transportation. So essentially, we found out a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, that the state has received some additional funding authority under the Bipartisan Transportation Infrastructure Law, the BIL. There's a whole bunch of different colors of funding, federal funding, that are being distributed, and some formula funds arrived to the state, and they were told they needed to get them under contract by September. And because they didn't have a specific formal process in place to distribute the funds, because they were new funds, they have opened it up to a little bit of a one-year opportunity. So let me talk about what they're looking for and how we might be able to help the state out and help our region out in win-win situation. So we have created a project list and we have two criteria. The project either needs to have been reviewed by you all through the call for projects, a previous call for projects, or 2021, or it needs to be have been reviewed by you all through our regional transportation improvement process and be listed in that plan as an unfunded or funded project, one or the other. So all of these projects have had some process and a lot of thought behind them. Like, that's the point I want to make. They're not coming out of nowhere. They have had a lot of years of work building up to them being proposed. So the state has set their priorities. We've talked a lot about inflation at this board, and that is hitting construction projects quite hard. And so their top priority is projects where the projects are coming in, the bids are coming in high, or their construction estimates are being raised. And remember, they're looking statewide. So it sounds like that is an issue across the state, as we could all expect. The other place that they are able to help us out is a lot of our projects, and we do this a lot in this region, is they have what I'd call an overmatch. There's a required match on a project, but the project costs are much higher than the funding that's available. And so the jurisdiction puts local money onto the project, and they're saying we can now replace that with federal money as long as the project's already been federalized. So that's their first priority. So existing projects that have already been funded that either have cost overruns or we can swap local money for federal money. And then their second priority are transit projects, design projects, and planning projects. So projects that, quite frankly, can be put under contract quite quickly and are ready to go, still extraordinarily important to our region, but they don't meet that other criteria of having cost overruns or swapping out local money. So project ranking, we're submitting a list to DOT and they'll decide which projects, if any, get funding. And we are able to submit the list starting today. So after your all meeting, I will go ahead and do that. I want to emphasize our projects aren't competing against each other. There could be enough money for all of them. The state will make that determination statewide, but it's there's a lot of, because of the shortness of this, there's just a lot of unknowns, and they won't know until they receive lists from all of the metropolitan planning organizations. And if we do receive funding, then it'll be in addition to what we receive annually. So this is extra money or bonus money, kind of like redistributed money that we've talked about, but a little bit different. So what are the projects that we've got on our list? We've got 3 what I think are priority 1 projects. Of course, they'll make that determination. The first is a Thurston County project. You all funded the design phase of this project for Little Rock Road and 113th Avenue, the bridge and intersection improvements. And so the proposal is to add funding to the design phase, basically reducing the local funds that are on the design phase. The next one is a Tumwater project at the X Street roundabout. We have funded the right-of-way phase of this project. It's set to obligate next month, and it has a large local match on it. So the proposal is to reduce the local match and replace that with federal funds. And then another Tumwater project, you have funded this one with our alternatives funding. It's for the Israel Road and Linderson Way pedestrian and bicycle improvements. We funded both the design and the construction phase of this, but it's the design phase that needs additional funding. Tumwater was going to use local funds, but we're proposing that we swap those out with federal funds. So all of these projects have federal funds on them already, and we're just essentially trying to swap out local funds with federal funds. And then we've got a large set of priority 2 projects. We have 3 transit projects that we have funded in the past and could use extra money, additional money. The Pattison rehab and expansion is a really large project that Intercity Transit has underway, and they have a lot of local funds on this project. So the idea is, again, to swap out the local funds for federal funds and let IT have some flexibility where they use the local funds. The propane fueled van and dialysis service, that was a project submitted for our CMAQ funding a couple of years ago. We were able to partially fund the project, not give them the full amount. It's been on our contingency list. So the proposal is to fully fund that project. And then the bus stop enhancements, that again was a project that was submitted that wasn't funded in our last round of projects, and it would fund additional bus stop enhancements. We funded bus stop enhancements over the years, and it's been a priority of ours over the years. There are 4 planning studies on the list, and planning studies are easy to get under contract. That's why you see them. They're lower dollar amounts, but easier to get under contract. Tumwater has the I-5 and 93rd Street Exchange Improvement Study. It would be a collaborative study with Washington State Department of Transportation, looking specifically at that interchange that has seen increased congestion and what might be able to be done there. TRPC is proposing a freight goods and services mobility strategy. This is the same project that we've applied for another federal grant, a RAISE grant, but we know those are highly competitive. So if there is additional federal funding through this source, it would be great to get that funded. We have a countywide bicycle connectivity strategy, basically a countywide bicycle plan. Also on the list, and that was also proposed for funding in 2020 and was put on our contingency list. All of these projects were, and as well as a multimodal level of service study. And then last, but certainly not least, are 3 design projects. And these ones have not come before you in a previous call for projects. They are projects where there's been some preliminary work, getting cost estimates, and now they're ready to start to the preliminary engineering phase. The first one is a Yelm Highway and Spurgeon Creek intersection study. There was a study done there, and a roundabout was selected as the preferred alternative, and the county's ready to move forward with design. The Rochester Main Streets improvements, you all might remember that we all worked collaboratively on a study there on Rochester Main Street, and the county is ready to now move forward to a design phase of that project. And again, the Tumwater Boulevard and I-5 exchange project, there's been a lot of preliminary work there. Tumwater's ready to move forward on a design. So if we could get some federal funding to get those projects started, that would be fantastic. So the timeline on this, today I'm reviewing it. Normally we'd ask, because there's such a short time turnaround to get this to DOT, we're asking you to take action today. The action is to submit the list to DOT for funding. You're not taking action on funding, just submitting the list. The way we've set up our review process, we also need to do some regional transportation improvement plan amendments on some of the projects, just changing some of the funding allocations, and for a lot of them, changing them from planned to funded projects. So our staff will be working with that. We have got that process going, and our Transportation Policy Board is the one that takes action on that. So they'll take action on those on June 8th. And I should mention, we've had these projects and this for both the amendments and for the project list out for public comment and have not received any public comment. And then in June or July, if we hear the projects are funded, our local partners start to get them under contract, what we call obligated. And by mid-September, all the projects have to be obligated that we put forward, or we might get sanctioned. So every project on this list, our partners have committed to get under contract if they were to receive the funding, and they think they can do that in a very short time frame. You might ask why other projects that you've heard about aren't on this list. That is the key there. These projects have to be able to get under contract in very short order. It's a very opportunistic type of funding in that they have to be ready to go. That's why you're not seeing as many construction projects, because those just take a lot of pieces to get into place. And you're seeing things like the transit projects, the design and the planning. Those are much easier to get under contract in a month or two. So I'm going to be asking for your action. I have rephrased this slightly differently than in the staff report, so I put it in my PowerPoint. The first action is to approve the list of projects to be submitted to the Washington State Department of Transportation for consideration of federal funding as outlined in the staff report. But I have a contingency on my contingency. Also direct us to add projects to the list that meet DOT's priority 1 criteria, federal funded projects where construction bids come in high as they arise. We know there's projects out there that are getting bids on right now, and the bids are coming in high. So we want to be able to move quickly and add those projects to the list as they arise. Just send them into DOT. we don't want to have to wait another 3 weeks or a month to come back to you and get approval for that. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm going to leave this slide up unless the chair wants, just so that you can read the action. And I'm happy to take questions.
Great, thank you very much, Dina. And thank you for leaving the slide up. I was going to furiously write down the words, and then I thought, well, I could just leave. We could just ask the slide to stay up.
I just would like to make one additional comment on this, and that is just to kind of underscore this is opportunistic. This is kind of responding quickly to this opportunity of there being more federal funding available through the state. This is different than what we talk about with redistributed funds, but I think this is an important moment in that it's the potential to get more projects funded, but also the reason that I wanted to kind of underscore this is I doubt this will be unique. Over the next handful of years, there is a lot of money that needs to be programmed out. And so part of what we're trying to do with this is set it up to where we can be nimble and be able to respond when there are these opportunities that we do expect to come up here and there over the next handful of years as the bipartisan infrastructure law funds get in place and as the Move Ahead Washington $16.5 billion of funds get in place. And so just wanted to mention that yes, this is opportunistic, and yet I think there's going to be more of these opportunities over the next handful of years.
Yeah, agreed. It's part of an agile strategy, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Before we go to questions, I just wanted to take a minute to acknowledge that Commissioner Edwards is here. It's nice to see you in person.
It is nice to be seen.
Great. So it looks like we're going to start with Mayor DePinto from Yelm. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you. I was wondering, is there any of these projects from South County?
No, there were no South County projects that were ready to go this time through. Like I said, it was a very hard list to put together in terms of they have to be ready to get obligated immediately. And so there were no South County projects. The only South County jurisdiction is Yelm really that has this type of projects ready to go. The other ones typically don't manage federal projects the same way.
Okay, and did you do a call for projects from department heads or even me? Did I just miss an email or something?
Oh, no, we work with our TAC representatives, the ones that usually put the projects through because they know all the ins and outs of the timing and that sort of thing. So yes, we worked with your staff.
Okay, and Yelm didn't say we had any projects that were ready to go?
No, and no. And it's just very much a timing thing. Olympia was in the same situation. They're just with the timing, they just weren't projects ready to go for this particular opportunity.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions, either online or in person? Yeah, Clark.
I just want to acknowledge Joe's comment and concern, because one of the things, certainly in the time I was on the TPB, the transportation side, we kept trying to figure out ways to get funds to South County and for countywide benefit. And I think that's part of this nimbleness. When there's these short turnaround, more flexible funding opportunities, we'll want to continue to prioritize that. And I just really appreciate this first effort, because I think that Mark's right. We're going to have a number of new one-time quick turnaround kinds of opportunities for federal funds coming through, and we want to be competitive to jump on those. And then last, I support Vina's suggestion that we leave it open for staff to add projects as bids come in during this short time window. If we have other bids that have come in higher than the estimates, and we can help make up the difference with this, I think that's really wise.
Yeah, Commissioner Edwards.
I want to piggyback on what Clark was talking about here, was because the county is also concerned about making sure they get adequate representation, because things are, we've got an item coming up, number 9, we'll be talking about a little bit. And there are issues where we might have concerns where it doesn't match exactly with what's going on from staff here. For an example, if we don't have adequate input to, and I just, following up on the mayor's comments, you know, from Joe's comments. Joe, just so you know, we're gonna have to spend a little time kind of coordinating some of this. Because otherwise you do tend to get left out in rural America. Doesn't quite match maybe growth management exactly and where the population is supposed to be going versus where maybe they are going when we consider remote work and different things like that. So we're gonna have to keep the infrastructure up in rural America at the same time we address things in the urban core. So Joe, I just want to mention that to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Edwards. Are there any other questions from online or in person or comments? Oh, I see Joe. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate, I understand it's a short turnaround for this. I just, it's, you know, I just want to make sure moving forward and in the future, it's more equitable for all of county, all of Thurston County rather than just the bigger cities. And if I have to do a better job of making sure you know what projects are ready to go, because we have a lot of projects that are ready to go right now, construction projects, transit projects, sidewalks, all these that, so I'm a little concerned that any of our projects weren't brought up. So I guess it's my job to work closer with TCRP.
Yeah, and we can have an offline discussion. A construction project takes a lot of time to get under contract, Mayor, and so it just, those, none of our jurisdictions put forward a new construction project. Those just wouldn't have worked within this time frame. All the ones that I listed already were under contract and we're simply adding more funds to them. So I don't want to go in the details of how hard it is to pull this project list. It truly is a reflection, though, of projects that are ready to go right now, and those are hard projects to have. I am thankful that we have such a large project list, and we will continue to work with all the staff to see what else we can put on it. But I think we've done a great job even pulling together such a robust project list for the DOT. Given all the mantra we keep saying is it's much easier to get federal money than spend federal money. Getting these things under contract is a very tiresome, cumbersome thing.
And I guess one more thing I'd add is that I do think that this opportunity also kind of underscores the importance over the next few years, as we've still got this federal funding opportunity available to us, to look at what it will take to get projects ready. You know, we all have some different definitions of what ready looks like. And even the state and the feds, when they come out with different opportunities, they will have different definitions of what ready looks like. But the things that we can do that are done during the preliminary engineering phase, the things that we can do to kind of better define a project to get ready for funding for that preliminary engineering phase. And again, really looking at those things that are under contract that already have funds that could take more funds. Those are the things that can move the quickest. And so would love to be talking Mayor DePinto and others about what it would take to get some of these projects ready for this type of opportunistic funding.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, Mark. And it just, to me, underscores the value of the sort of collaborative nature of this work and the collegiality and the opportunity that we have to come together and do some thinking ahead, especially knowing that there are going to be things in the queue, and that we do want to see equal benefit or equitable benefit for residents across the county. So yeah, awesome. Are there any other questions or comments? Yeah, John, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. A lot of the stuff that I was going to say has just been said. I do want to add one last thing. This is not something that just came up 6 months ago or a year ago. The staff here has been working on this for, I think, at least 3 years, maybe a little bit longer, because we saw something along the line that this was coming for us, and we may have an opportunity. So with how fast this has to move, which should, for government, this is pretty quick. They've done a very good job for Thurston County. I want to say thank you to them, and I also want to make a motion to accept to approve the list of projects and all the other words that are up there.
Thanks, John. Vina, do you need me to read that into the record?
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
So it sounds like I am looking for a motion to approve the list of projects to be submitted to WSDOT for consideration of federal funding as outlined in the staff report. Do I do the direct staff at the same time, and directing staff to add projects to the list that meet WSDOT's priority 1 criteria, federally funded projects where construction bids come in high as they arrive. And it sounds like John has made such a motion.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second, Carolyn Cox.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to take this action. Is there any further discussion? Great. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
And any abstentions?
Aye.
Great, the motion passes. Thank you very much to staff for the work. And we will look forward to continued collaboration around getting more projects shovel ready, making Thurston County the destination for federal funds. Okay, our next item is the 2022 mid-year program update. That's going to be presented by Mark. And I will hand it off to you, Mark.
All right, I am just going to share my screen. And go to presenter mode. Okay. And go to the beginning. Okay. So good morning again, all. You get a whole lot of dose of me today, so I apologize for that, but there's a whole lot to go over. And so for folks that are new to council, each year in either June or July, I provide an update on our progress to implement our strategic plan and to implement our annual work program and unified planning work program for transportation. When I do this, I usually try and highlight some of the work that we don't talk about quite as much, because there are, and it strikes me when I go to put this together each year, we've got a relatively small staff, 20 people, and the quality, the breadth of work, everything that we've got going on, it impresses me every time I really take a step back and look at all the pieces. And I also want to point out as we go through this, pay attention to the project leads on this. We've got an excellent bench of people, and these are just some of the folks that are leading our work. We've talked a fair amount about transition over the next year, and that's true. And yet I want to point out again, look at a lot of these names that we've got here. We've got an incredibly talented staff, and we're going to continue to be able to serve the region as well as ever, well into the future with the folks that we've got on board. So to talk through some of the, sorry, I gotta figure out how to get my Zoom off my screen. There we go. So talking about some of the key projects and Martin Way Corridor Study. This is one we have talked about, and you're going to be hearing a lot more about this in the pretty near future, because we're starting to get near the end of this project. This is a contract that we're working with Olympia, Lacey, Thurston County, and Intercity Transit. I love this project. I think it's really, really cool what's going on with this work. Martin Way has huge potential for our region. It's already incredibly important, served as our highway for many, many years. And since that time has developed kind of on its own since, the 50s and 60s. And our partners recognized that we would benefit from taking a step back and looking at the corridor broadly from the Pacific Y clear through Deutero at the end of Hawks Prairie. And what's our vision for this corridor? What do we want it to look like from a land use perspective, from a transportation perspective, from housing, commercial? And we've been working on this for about 2 years now. We're close to completing the alternatives analysis. There's been a number of options that are being looked at. Staff have been presenting this to the key partners and getting input early on some of the strategies that we're looking at. I definitely would encourage people, there's an online open house that's open until June 6th, so you still have a few days left to look at it. It is a great way to provide some input, but also to give you a better sense of where this project has been and where it's going. And so I definitely encourage folks to fill out that, to go to that June 6th open house, online open house. You can get to it from our banner on our main page. And then in some of the future work in the fall, we're going to be now moving into actually better defining the strategies, what the investments would look like, and really finalizing the plan. So this is one that council will certainly be hearing more about the rest of this year. I'm excited for people to see more about this work. Southwest Thurston County Trail Feasibility Study. This is a partnership between TRPC and Thurston County. It builds off the Main Street Rochester and Grand Mound work that we did over the past few years. And this was to look at that area of Rochester, Grand Mound, Confederated Tribes of Chehalis, and how can we better connect multimodal connections to those communities and link up the trail network also to the north and to the others to the east. And so we've done a lot of outreach on this, open houses, and now we're working on the current conditions report, getting a technical work group together, and then we'll really be looking into the routes for that Southwest County trail and looking for feasible routes. This will be part of what is considered in the Regional Trails Plan, which is ongoing, and we've been working on this for a couple of years now. We've got a 20-member stakeholder work group that's advising this effort over the past year. A big function has been working with the managing agencies, the trail managing agencies for the jurisdictions, and getting information on how are you doing maintenance operations, what kind of interagency coordination is already going on, what are the safety issues, and then we're also doing an inventory of all the trail system and all the future plans for the trail system, so we can start to look at those gaps and connections and what are the needs over the next 20 plus years. Putting all of that information into a new GIS database. And then we'll be working on project summaries for the different project proposals and forming it into a plan to be done near the end of this year into early 2023. The rural mobility strategy. This is an important one for South County. This is a project that was approved by council where we're looking at some of those main connectors between South County and the more urban areas to the north, and what are the traffic volumes on those key roadways? What kind of what are the configurations? What are the safety issues on those? What kind of constraints do we have? And we've got a consultant, Fair and Peers, that's doing some technical analysis to help us look at that data and translate that into strategies to help improve the connectivity between South County and the north. And this is on key roadways like Rainier Road, Old Highway 99, those key sorts of connectors. This project also is scheduled to be completed in 2023. Our hazard mitigation plan update. Paul Brewster's our lead on this and has been the last couple times that this has been done. We've got a Federal Emergency Management Agency grant, FEMA grant, to fund this update. We do it every 5 years. We update the plan every 5 years. And right now, we're kind of just getting started on this work this time around. There right now is another open house. I encourage people to take a look at this survey. It's at trpc.org/hazards, if you can't read that on the screen. And there's also an opportunity to provide input on that in terms of what kinds of concerns, what kinds of opportunities do folks in the community see around hazard mitigation, getting us ready and resilient for hazards. And one other thing I want to talk about here is there is a grant program that's available now. This is in relation to the January 2022 winter event where we had quite a bit of damage. Emergency was declared, and there's now a program that has, I think it's 4 to 5 million, if I remember correctly. Yep, 4 to 5 million. That's estimated to be available to communities like Thurston County that were affected by that disaster in January 2022, the severe winter storm event. 12.5% match is needed on that, but there is a $4 to $5 million available to help address some of those losses during that event in January 2022.
Before you move on.
Sure.
You mentioned Rainier Road and Old 99, but I mean, you just use those.
Those are just, for example.
Tilly, Little Rock, 507.
There's a
510.
there's a table that I could send out with the after meeting summary that includes the current what's currently highlighted as kind of those stretches of roadway of priority for this work. And there is a table already with all those.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to stick up for South County. Make sure that yeah.
Well, there's two exceptions. There's two segments that are about connecting up to north of the Olympia Lacey, the Thurston County areas to the north of Lacey Olympia, but primarily they are those routes from the Olympia Lacey Tumwater area south down to Thurston County. But we'll include that table of the roadways in the after meeting summary.
I mean, I know we're addressing some of that Gidget Road, I think up there about something is coming.
There are a number, there's probably around 20 stretches that have been looked at, but we'll include that in the
Yeah,
summary.
okay, I'm just making sure of that.
Okay, thank you. Local pre-disaster recovery planning. There are still a number of folks that are on council that participated in the February 2019 exercise at Ocean Shores, where we tested out a disaster recovery framework. And so that was a tabletop exercise. We spent 4 days out there where we were looking at if a major disaster, we looked at an earthquake out there, were to happen in this area. We're not talking about the response. We're not talking about the immediate health and safety issues. But after we're through that to some extent, although you can start this recovery pretty much immediately, but then it's about, well, how do we get the economy going again? How do we get the schools up and running again? All those kinds of questions. And so out of that, we tested this Recovery Council framework. Since that time, there's been an interlocal agreement of the major parties on setting up the Disaster Recovery Council, DRC, that we tested at that event in Ocean Shores. And so that Disaster Recovery Council has now been formed and has met 5 times. That's a big accomplishment in and of itself. We have the body that will help direct us when and if a major disaster happens. But also the Disaster Recovery Council has instructed staff to work on the 3 areas that weren't ready in Ocean Shores that we didn't look at, and those were infrastructure and utilities, cultural and historic resources, and natural resources. And so that's what we're working on now to stand up those three resource areas.
Question,
Yes.
especially the last two that you mentioned, how does that actually help an area recover? So you have to have the infrastructure. You gotta have businesses starting to open up their doors again, and you have to have the ability for people to move around. That's the part I don't quite understand, because the part doesn't go away, it doesn't break. And as things start coming back and people are starting to move around again, the cultural part just reappears.
Well, a big part of that cultural and historic resources and natural resources is about there's going to be damage potentially.
Yeah, I understand. I work with FEMA. Very super outstanding.
And so it's really about, as we're recovering, as we're reconstructing and such, how are we going to make sure that we are adequately protecting and addressing culture and historic resources? How are we making sure that we rebuild in a way that accounts for our what we want to see for our natural resources? So it's really more about that. As we recover, how do we make sure that we keep the integrity of our natural resources and our cultural and historic resources?
I just want to pause for like process. So we're going to try and get through the
Yeah, you'd
full
like me to keep
report, and
going.
we can come back. And Debbie, I see you top of the queue. Thank you for being patient.
Just a handful more slides. So the other thing that I'd like to say on this is anyone who's planning to go to the June 6th Emergency Management Executive Seminar, it's going to be fun. We're going to do another bit of a tabletop exercise, the Thornton County Disaster Recovery Challenge. And Paul Brewster and Casey Mock, our staff, took us through that exercise last week at an all-staff meeting, and we really liked it. So I think it's going to be a good meeting on June 6th. Okay, school walk route mapping. This was another project that council funded. It's a partnership with North Thurston Public Schools, Olympia School District, and Tumwater School District. And we're updating the school walk route maps for all the elementary and middle schools, and taking into account things like where are their sidewalks, where's the school zone, where are flashing beacons, where are their crossings, those kinds of things to help identify safe walking routes for children at those elementary schools. This project was challenging to accomplish over COVID, and so we've learned a lot through this. And part of what we talked about is we need a maintenance plan for these maps. How often are we going to relook at these maps, update them, and make sure that we keep everything up to date? Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA compliance was an issue for completing these maps, making sure that we had the ability for the internet to read these maps and to be able to tell people with differing abilities what is on the map. That was new to us and took quite a bit of work to massage and get right, but we've been working on that. Thurston Climate Action Plan. This is a partnership with Thurston County, Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, and TRPC. We've talked a fair amount about this in the past. We're just getting started on another implementation interlocal agreement with the parties. Some of the focus for these next few years is the steering committee that's already been established, but just this week, the window closed for applications to be on an advisory work group for community members to be on an advisory work group that we're convening. Looking at how do we track progress long-term. There's the start of a dashboard, and that's what you see to the right. I'd encourage people to take a look at the project website because then you can dig into the start of this dashboard and tracking our progress. We're just getting started. First, TRPC, we're going to be taking over the greenhouse gas inventory. And so we're working on an agreement, actually just signed it yesterday, an agreement with Thurston Climate Action Team to help us transition that regular inventory of greenhouse gases to TRPC. And we're doing a lot of looking at funding opportunities, trying to match up what's in the plan with available funding. Boundary Review Board. This is definitely one you don't hear much about. And so folks might not remember that starting in 2018, we at TRPC, we've been serving again as the clerk for the Boundary Review Board. And what this entails is under Growth Management Act, there's a process set up where when there's annexations, when there's controversy around those annexations, that can go to the Boundary Review Board for adjudication. And we basically coordinate, provide the support for that Boundary Review Board. Since 2018, we've done 25 annexations. You'll notice 2022 was a big year. 12 of those were in Tumwater, where Tumwater has been spending a lot of effort, and we are very grateful for this, spending a lot of effort to get rid of some of their island annexations, those pieces that are largely surrounded by city, but have been difficult to annex for whatever reason. And this year, Tumwater did a big effort to look at 12 of those areas and annex them, and did an excellent job with the planning on that. So it went really quite smoothly for 12 annexations all in one year.
Didn't the state in 2005 change the rules for annexation to make things a lot easier?
They did, in fact, yes. Transportation model update. This is our regional transportation demand management demand model. And we've talked about the household travel survey that's ongoing. That's a huge piece of data that feeds into this model. This is our model that we use to update the regional transportation plan, and that we use to look out at what we expect this region to look like, and how the transportation system will function over the next 20 plus years. So to date, we've got more than 2,000 completed responses to the household travel survey. That's excellent. We're still looking for some more, and we're still hoping to get some more from people outside of Thurston County and Lewis and Pierce counties. We'd still like to see a little more participation if we can get it. We've also been supplementing information with traffic counts that City of Olympia is doing, and we've also contracted with a group to get traffic counts. So at areas where we want more detailed data about what's going on today, we're getting that data. We also purchased Streetlight for the first time. This is the kind of quote unquote big data that's being mined from people's cell phone information primarily. And this data provides all kinds of different information on how people move and get around that we can put into our model to just better validate what's happening today and help us better project out how things will function in the future. So we're pretty excited about this new rebuild of the model. This is a ton of work. It's going to be going on clear into 2024, but to get us ready for the next regional transportation plan update.
Do we have people that volunteer for this program that commute back and forth from North County to South County?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. Capital Campus Phase 2 telework. We've talked about this one quite a bit. This was a project that started before the pandemic. And the intent of the project originally was to work with the state to improve the rates of telework and flex schedules and other transportation demand management strategies. It's changed a ton since the pandemic. Biggest thing being we've achieved rates of telework that no one ever dreamt of, quite honestly. And so really the focus of the work has changed to a lot of interviews with different agencies, because again, the focus is that Capitol campus area. With the agencies, with people that are working on campus, people that are working in hybrid sorts of situations, so that we can try and mine the experiences that are working best and find out those things that aren't working as well, and are there things that we can do to help, so that we don't expect the current rates, because there was a commute trip reduction survey done in early 2022. And we're still looking at 71% of people on Capitol campus are teleworking. Thurston County wide, 63.33% of people are still teleworking. And so we are still very much in this kind of new way of doing business. And we're going to be tracking how that changes over the next year or two.
I'm not sure that's really going to change much,
It-
especially with the cost of fuels to get back and forth to work.
It very well may not. And so those are, I mean, tons of pieces of work that I just went over. But again, the point of this mid-year is just to really provide you with a little bit of a broader look of what we've got going on. And also, as you're thinking, if any questions, but also if there are any of these pieces that you'd like to make sure we bring back to council for more in-depth update, if you just send me an email, send Berlin an email so that we can get that on the schedule as well.
Thank you very much, Mark. Well, we've got Debbie patiently waiting. Thank you, Debbie. And then Carolyn in the queue, and I'll be looking for other folks, but we'll start with Debbie and Carolyn.
I have a question. So I did attend the Ocean Shores on the disaster recovery, and that was a great event. So I attended that, and I do plan on going to the meeting on June 6th. But I am not sure who are the representatives on the Disaster Recovery Council. Is that something that you could, do you know, who are those individuals that are on there?
So we've got Paul Brewster on the line. So I'm going to see if Paul's available to answer that question. Paul?
Yeah, hi. I can share that. For City of Olympia, well, let me back up. For City of Tumwater, since the question came from Tumwater, is Fire Chief Brian Hurley. For Lacey, it's Ed Taylor, the city's emergency manager. For Thurston County, it's Sandy Ecker, the outgoing Thurston County emergency manager. For Olympia, it's their emergency manager. I'm sorry, the name is evading me at the moment. Haven't had my second cup of coffee yet, but I can share that with you. For Bucota, it's the mayor of Bucota, Stephen Purcell. And for Rainier and Tenino, we've had Thurston County staff representing them, Mike Presswood. And I also want to add that on TRPC's web page, we do have a project page for this project that has all the meeting agendas, information, as well as a list of the members of that Disaster Recovery Council. And for Yelm, it's Associate Planner Sarah Williams, who's been filling in for Interim City Manager Todd Stansel.
Thank you.
Carolyn. Oh, I think you might be muted, Carolyn. Sorry.
Thank you. This is for Mark on the hazards mitigation plan update. You mentioned that the deadline for pre-applications is July 8th. And I just wondered how that's going to happen between now and then in terms of any council action that may be required.
Well, that was more of an FYI that Paul might be able to give us more information on, but that's more of a slight tangential FYI, because that is funding that's available because of a specific emergency event, that January 2022 event. But Paul, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'll just real quick. So the jurisdictions all have representatives that are attending a hazard mitigation planning work group, and at our last month's meeting, we had staff from Washington Emergency Management Division brief your staff on that funding availability. And that July 8th deadline is really a letter of intent. So it's a really simple description of what the project proposal might be for Washington Emergency Management Division staff to review to make sure it's an eligible project. And then I believe the actual application will be in September, deadline in September. That doesn't go through TRPC. Your jurisdictions that have an approved hazard mitigation plan apply directly as a subgrantee through the state.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. All right. Are there any other questions? And also, what I heard also was that if people have follow-up questions about specific details about projects, that maybe connecting with staff afterwards is a good strategy as well. So,
Hillary,
oh, yeah.
could I get just one,
Sure, yeah.
maybe with Mark? I think it is so very important on your telework study, if you will, because it has such a direct impact on almost everything else that we're going to be pushing. So I don't know what your plan is as far as having us kept up to speed, you know, how many percent are staying home, how many are different things like that that are going to be crucial, because I think it's going to affect everything else we're doing.
I agree with you. And so we will keep bringing you information, but also anytime anyone wants an update, just give a holler, but we'll keep bringing that back. Because one of the things that we've heard recently is for example, is that the state is looking at their owned facilities and looking to fully occupy those owned facilities. Well, that has a big impact for our region, because that would, if that goes forward that way, that largely means the Capitol campus will be chiefly occupied, and some other areas of our region that have lease space in the future may not be as occupied. And
I'm
so,
very concerned about that from our Atrium
Yeah.
project. We end up with 90,000 square feet and don't need it. We're gonna look foolish.
So we definitely are going to be tracking those things and bringing them back to you regularly for sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll talk to you after.
Good, all good questions. And it's such a joy to see all of the really great work that's happening. So thanks for the update, Mark.
Absolutely.
Our next, let me just look on, I don't see any other hands up online.
Don't tap me.
Okay, I said online, John. No more questions in person, just kidding. Okay, so our next item is the update on I-5 Mounts Road to Tumwater. Woo, it's gonna be a doozy.
It's gonna.
Just a reminder, please hold questions till the end and we'll work the queue. You might have questions that occur to you during the presentation. If you could jot those down so that we can hear the full presentation and then folks can ask their questions, that would be great. Take it away, Mark.
I want to preface this with my apologies to those who this will be their second or third time seeing this. I promise I'm retiring this. So I told council during my evaluation that I was going to be spending time getting out and talking with folks about this key project, which I've been doing so. And so what I'd like to ask today is, when I finish this up, if there is anyone who would like me to provide this presentation to your board, your council, or any other group, please just email me directly. Because I'm seeing a lot of people getting this multiple times. So I'm going to stop the proactive scheduling and just ask you if you would like your group to receive this. I'd love to come present it, but I want to limit how many people I make sit through this many times. So thank you. So this, I wanted to provide this update on I-5 because this has been our top priority for some years. There's been a ton of progress on this, and there is some important milestones coming up where us providing our input to the state will be critical. So just very briefly as background, again, we've been working on this for many years. We received our first funding from the state in 500,000 in 2017 to start to look at what our issues are on I-5 between Mounts Road and Tumwater and how could we address them. We learned a lot since then. The Planning and Environmental Linkages report that WashDOT was working on, we received that funding in 2019. They just completed that report, which is what you see a link to at the bottom, and also what that photo is to the left is the cover of that Pell report. It just came out in March of 2022, an important document. And the state is under contract now with Parametrics to do the National Environmental Policy Act review. And they're going to be kicking that off before the end of the year. And that's one of the opportunities that I'll talk a little bit more about. The scoping process of NEPA is really important for all of us to pay attention to. And then in Move Ahead Washington, there was 75 million approved by the legislature. And we're clarifying the legislative intent with legislators right now, looking at 19 million of that to go to roundabouts outside of Yelm, potential for 1.5 million to go to part-time shoulder use engineering, and the remaining 54.5 million going to the Nisqually River Delta. So a little bit about why those are the priorities for that 75 million. As we were working on this from a congestion standpoint, the Nisqually Indian tribe made us aware early on of this issue with the Nisqually River, where I-5 is essentially acting as a dam across the Nisqually. This has gotten a lot of coverage, so I won't spend a lot of time on this, but essentially, when I-5 was first constructed, more of the span across the Nisqually River Delta was on pillars. But in the early 60s, as a cost savings measure, the state filled in a lot of those spaces with rock and dirt. And one of the unintended consequences of that, again, is it sort of I-5 now acts as a dam. And when we have peak flow events, and that's what you're looking at here, I'll point you mostly to the difference between 1990 and 97. And we had big flooding events in 96 and in 97. And during those flooding events, there's a lot of energy in that stream. It's got to go somewhere. And where it's been going is cutting its channel towards I-5. And recent United States Geological Survey hydrology study found that within the next 17 to 25 years, at current rates of erosion, we can expect I-5 to cut its channel to, Nisqually River to cut its channel to and through I-5. And so there's certainly urgency around this issue. This is also a very high priority from a salmon recovery standpoint. What you're looking at here, this is a bathymetry image, which is basically the elevation underwater. So those blue areas are deeper water, and as you approach red, that's shallower water. Gray are things above sea level. What I wanted to draw your attention to is where the Nisqually River goes through I-5 right there, and it's a very narrow opening. That mixing area of freshwater and saltwater is incredibly important to young salmon as they transition from being a freshwater animal to a saltwater animal. The bigger that area of mixing, the fitter, the more robust those salmon are, and there is a direct correlation between that fitness when they're young and its survival to adulthood to come back to spawn. And so this has been a huge issue for the Nisqually Indian tribe that we're looking to address through this work. Okay, from a congestion standpoint, this is what started this work. Is we all know that right now through Joint Base Lewis-McChord, they are adding a lane in both directions. That'll be an HOV lane between Thorn Lane and Mounts Road. And what our transportation model shows is for 2045, on a typical afternoon, this is not when there's an event, this is what we would expect on a typical evening commute, This is it just past 6 o'clock. And what looks like a red line there is actually individual dots of representing vehicles that are in stop and go traffic. And that starts at Mounts Road in the southbound direction and backs up about 7 miles. So substantial backup as we go from 4 lanes back down to 3 at the end of that current JBLM project that's going on now. We saw the importance of these issues with the train derailment in February 2017. I think that's right. Where we had I-5 closed for 3 days, 2 alternate routes, added either 50 or 70 miles and somewhere between 2 and 8 hours to the trip to get around. And so we're looking not just at I-5, but also how can we help those alternate routes? I mentioned the roundabouts outside of Yelm. And we're, like I said, we're working on the legislative intent right now for the 75 million to clarify that 19 million of that should go to construction of these roundabouts. We want to make sure that these get constructed before we do anything with I-5, because any work on I-5 is going to push more vehicles onto that alternate route, Highway 507. And our model shows that changing a roundabout from the signal that's currently at Highway 702 intersection and creating a roundabout at the Vale Road intersection and Bald Hill Road greatly improves the function through that area. And the one thing, because you can see my cursor, that just so you know, part of the modeling for this that showed the benefit of those roundabouts does include the bypass. So our model is assuming the bypass is complete through this area. And just to give an update on that, this is a project that the bypass, Yelm bypass, was funded with connecting Washington funds. It's been slowed up by some gopher issues and some cultural resource issues. Heard from WashDOT, they've worked through the gopher issues and they're still working through the cultural resource issues, but they believe that that's the last thing that needs to be addressed before they can put this out to bid. So hopefully the bypass will be coming soon. The other major pinch point on I-5 is at the interchange with US 101. And that's what you're looking at here. This is I-5 going through the Olympia area and Highway 101 going off to the west. Again, this is afternoon commute, any given weekday. That red line again is individual dots on southbound I-5. We've got a lot of weaving in that area. We already see congestion, significant congestion in that area that will just continue to worsen over time. And in 2045, we expect that back up in the southbound direction to extend clear to about almost exit 111 at Hawks Prairie. So we'd be pretty much in stop and go traffic through the Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater areas. One of the strategies that we looked at, and our modelers have done an excellent job of providing. I mentioned that the planning and environmental linkages report was done in March of 2022. When we got that report, one of the things that we found is because of some of the way strategies were rolled up, it was hard to see the individual benefit of some of the strategies, like part-time shoulder use. Because the way in the planning and environmental linkages, part-time, we've got 3 timeframes. We had kind of current, 2030, and 2045. And this part-time shoulder use was so beneficial between current and 2030 that the 2045 model assumes that that part-time shoulder use was going to be built. And so when you looked at the results of the Pell, 2045 was looking better than it would if we didn't implement that part-time shoulder use. So I asked our modelers, show me what it looks like with and without part-time shoulder use in 2045. And really substantial difference. I know it's hard to see. What I mainly want to point your attention to are the 2 big blue arrows. And this is that same stretch of I-5 looking from, actually this one, you're looking clear from the Delta through the interchange. And that top screen is if we don't implement part-time shoulder use. And again, sorry, part-time shoulder use would be between Sleater, Kinney, and Henderson. And essentially what we're doing is restriping and doing some hardening of the shoulder so that it can be used as a driving lane during those peak periods. So when congestion's occurring and vehicles are slowing down, that shoulder can be used as a lane of traffic. And the benefit of that, the above figure is what 6:40 in the evening looks like on a typical afternoon in 2045 without that part-time shoulder use. And the figure below is that same time period if we do the part-time shoulder use. It's estimated at 15 million. That's a pretty huge increase in function for a 15 million investment. And so that's why we are also working with legislators to have 1.5 million of the 75 million be used to do the engineering for this part-time shoulder use so that we can make sure it gets done along with the needed improvements through the Delta. So next steps. The NEPA scoping is going to be kicking off sometime before the end of the year. That's why I've been doing so many of these presentations. I really want to highlight for folks, NEPA scoping is an important part of the process. So the contractor in WashDOT will issue a scoping document that will talk about all the things that they think that need to be addressed in the environmental review. That is our opportunity, individually and collectively, to let the state know if they've missed anything. Are there other things that need to be considered in this analysis? Are there priorities for any of the jurisdictions that need to be considered in this analysis? And that scoping opportunity to write a letter to include all of those things is a really important part of the NEPA process, to make sure you get those on the record, because the process of NEPA, it is up to the state to make sure that all reasonable alternatives were considered and evaluated. This is our opportunity to make sure that all reasonable alternatives are considered and evaluated. Then also just wanted to highlight that we have resubmitted the proposal. Vina talked about the regional freight mobility strategy. We're looking at a variety of ways to get this funded. We've also put in a RAISE grant, a federal grant of 1 million to do that regional freight mobility strategy. Just want to mention high capacity transportation quickly, because this was a little bit of an unexpected benefit of the session. Thurston Regional Planning Council received 250,000 to look at our opportunities and the feasibility of different opportunities for high capacity transportation. This is looking at things like expanded express bus service to the north, bus rapid transit, enhanced van pools, commuter rail, light rail. The thinking on this, when we met with Senator Elias, who's the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee, he wanted to make sure that we had those feasible options reviewed before decisions were made on I-5, to make sure that any work that was done on I-5 was able to consider and incorporate what makes sense for high capacity transportation in the future for the Thurston region. And so we're going to be putting out an RFP to support that work in the next month or so. So more to come on that. So that's what I've got on I-5. You'll notice it's the same thanks and questions slide.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, everybody's really invested in what happens on I-5, so it's always really good. Do we have any questions? I'm looking first to see if there's anyone who is not talked yet or asked a question yet. Okay, you can still raise your hand. I'm gonna look to the, like. Oh,
Gilman and I are
Commissioner
gonna
Edwards.
arm wrestle.
Okay. Oh, you know what? Eileen does have a question. So let's can we move to Eileen and then Bob Ayel? And then we'll move to folks who have already had questions before. So Eileen, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mark, for that. And I know to you that you also attend the South Sound Military Partnership. And I was looking for the recent letter that they sent out, or the newsletter that they did. And thought I saw something in there, because we talked about, if the military, if the feds ever considered like opening up the back route to, as they did when we had the train activity or the train accident. So, but I think I saw something in there where they weren't going to move forward. So I wasn't sure if you had seen that as well. So. With that study. Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the Pell again on that. So let me check on that, and then I'll include that in the after meeting summary.
Bob, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Sorry for the delay there. I don't really have a question. I just had a comment. I just want to encourage Mark not to retire this presentation too quickly. There's a lot of really good information in there that really needs to be shared often and to as many people as you can sit down and get them to listen, because this is a really important project, and I just want to encourage you to keep up the good work with it.
I appreciate that. So yes, by all means, let me know if you'd like me to come present to your group. I would love to.
Thank you, Bob. Commissioner Edwards, do you and.
Well, I'm gonna defer,
Okay.
Clark got here soon.
All right.
He was quicker.
Mark, I know you've explained before your, like the committee that you're serving on, or the board. I can't remember the structure when you said our modelers. Is that DOTs or a contractor or TRPC?
Yeah, thank you. So no, that's actually our TRPC modelers. We have with both the first contract, the phase 1 work, and the planning and environmental linkages work, both of those, WashDOT contracted with TRPC for some of the support. And a big part of that support was it's been our modeling team that's been supporting the modeling to date. As they move into NEPA, the COT will be packaging up our model for the consultant to use. But up to this point, it's been our staff.
Great, and I'll just it's my same soapbox that I'm always on, that the assumptions for the modeling, that as long as we continue to project based on our history, we're never going to consider any sort of transformation that we've also called out in several other documents. So it's just that tension emerges in a lot of this work.
And one thing I'd say on that some of that is what also informed our desire to purchase the big data. As things are getting more complicated and more uncertain, as staff, the best way we can help is to look for even more data to help us better understand how things are changing and how that impacts our assumptions. So yeah, that's going to continue to be a challenge though. There's a lot going on and a lot's changing.
Commissioner Edwards.
On the NEPA study, part of this is actually going to be national security. And Congresswoman Strickland is right in the middle of that. So she's very much aware. But kind of from a preventive maintenance standpoint, you've got the power plant up there. And if you went, you don't have to go back to it, but those 4 slides you show of the river from the past up until now, and that horseshoe working its way out, those all took place because of excessive water flow that possibly could have been prevented had Tacoma Power done a few things different. Now, FERC doesn't regulate Tacoma Power as a flood control, but I do think it's worth mentioning that if we're going to have preventive maintenance and try to prevent that washout from happening for as long as we possibly can, because these projects take a while. I think it's really important to maybe communicate with FERC, maybe with Tacoma Power. Tacoma Power is an excellent partner with the Nisqually Tribe on fish issues as well. So it's kind of a sensitive timing issue where they keep the water level. But if they keep it right, and it's a balance to keep it right, we have a potential of lessening that exposure to that horseshoe, if you will, cutting out. So I just think it's so important to get that information in early on that NEPA issue.
So Commissioner, well said, and that's a perfect example of why I'm really trying to highlight this NEPA scoping opportunity, because that would be the kind of thing that I would hope that the county would put into a response to that NEPA scoping letter. Make sure that this review considers the impact of Alder Dam and how it's run on the issues of flood risk to I-5. And so then you've got that on the record, and it'll be up to that consultant team in WashDOT to take a look at how that impacts that flood risk.
Yeah, and I just want, because county commissioners come and go, representatives change, but Mark's gonna be here. for a while.
I will be
So
here.
I want to make sure that it's at least in the thought process here, because you are a representative in this particular area. So we'll be with you on that, but no guarantee.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I've been asked about that we've committed to is we as TRPC staff will put together kind of a robust, here are the kinds of things that we see that should be considered in the NEPA review. And then individual members can pick and choose from that or add to it. But at least give kind of a starting point for the issues that we as staff see. I'll make sure that's part of it. Yep.
Great question. Are there any other questions for Mark about this I-5 update?
I'll be nice.
Okay, anyone else in the queue before we go to John? Okay, go ahead, John, take it away.
One of the things, and you've heard me say this before, Clark mentioned it as well, is looking at the traffic that you're projecting. It's relatively static. It's not taking into any new technology. You've heard me talk about flying cars. I can show you pictures of them right now. What we've never taken in, because we've never really had to, was the price of fuel that we see right now. And with the projections of it going through at about $10 a gallon just for diesel, which we relied to about when I was young, and about $8 just in our area for gasoline powered vehicles. There's a whole lot of stuff that's happening over the last couple of years that I'm not seeing touched on in any of these plans now. The technology part, because of gasoline, that's going to change how transportation is done. I see we were moving away, trying to get people back. Elon Musk just said, if you don't show up to the office, I'm going to assume you quit. But that's going to change real quick, because people even at that salary range are going to have a hard time paying for gas just to get back and forth to work. So I don't see the work from home bit going away as quickly as everybody thought it would. And I don't see a whole lot of this stuff being taken into account. Some of it, I granted, like gasoline, that's a fast acting one. We've never had to really pay much attention to fuel prices before. 2008 for a little bit, but that's nothing like we're seeing right now. This is nothing. I go back, I'm old enough to remember Jimmy Carter, and this is nothing compared to Jimmy Carter days and gasoline prices and stuff. We need to start looking at that kind of stuff, because it's not going to be short range stuff, especially when you look at what some of the things that Washington is saying, Washington, D.C., where by 2030, you're going to own nothing and like it. The Build Back Better plan, transportation on the DC level is going to completely change unless something happens over the short term. But we're not supposed to look at short-term, we're supposed to look at long-term, and what's happening right now is something that we should have looked at a long time ago and did. This is just all of a sudden. So it just makes this more of an issue for me that we look at these things and we haven't.
So I think what I can do to help on that issue from a staff perspective is as we're doing our model development, sounds like it might be helpful to have a bit of a presentation on what all goes into that model.
Yeah.
That's a great
Okay.
Yeah, this is something I've been watching for some time now, and all of a sudden this just exploded.
I guess I'd like to follow up. with
Yeah,
Joe's
yeah, go ahead.
comment, if I could. Interest rates, mentioned Jimmy Carter, I got stuck with about 16%.
Oh, you got one of the good deals. They went up to 44.
And so, I mean, it's a crucial piece of the component that we're dealing with. But I also said commissioners come and go depending on policy, so do others. You know, so we don't know how long-term this is really gonna hold. Yet we've got a pretty serious, I think, recession, possibly depression.
I think we're already in a
coming
recession.
that is gonna cause us some real delays on a lot of projects that we might be talking about too. So a lot of things to consider.
Thank you
That's what I've
for
been
the
watching.
robust discussion.
Yeah.
That brings us, I think, to our break. It does. Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break. We're only running 1 minute behind, so I'm gonna give us the full 5 minutes and come back at 10:06. So get something to care for your physical well-being.
You know, one of the reasons I love you is your persistence and your resilience. I gotta tell you.
Their cameras back on. Thank you for coming back, because next up is federal infrastructure and capacity for grant application processes. And it's Mark.
Yay! All right. So this is a discussion that started in Transportation Policy Board. I've been talking with many members about the bipartisan infrastructure law. All of your staff are tracking the bipartisan infrastructure law. 550 billion in new monies that are to be programmed between now and September 2026. And so some of the discussion in Transportation Policy Board that's been led by Chair Andy Ryder has been looking at this opportunity of federal funding, and we're seeing the existing programs, some of the amount of money that they have to program out is growing. And therefore, some of them are increasing their minimums. Like I've mentioned before, I think that there was one grant opportunity that the last time it went out, the minimum project size was 5 million. This time, the minimum project size is 20 million. And so the federal government with these funds are looking for bigger, what they call transformational sorts of projects. And so the discussion with Chair Andy Ryder and with TPB has been, is there an opportunity and should we look at TRPC to either hire a project staff person or a consultant to help track these federal grant opportunities, to help connect our jurisdictions and different projects in the regional transportation improvement program, and support in actually preparing applications. That's gotten a lot of, we've discussed this a number of times with the TAC and with TPB, Technical Advisory Committee, and with the Transportation Policy Board. At their last meeting, the Transportation Policy Board had a robust discussion. They preferred that we try to hire a staff person and recommended the council to look at us hiring a staff person for this grant coordination work. That said, I really want to emphasize the feedback that we've received from the Technical Advisory Committee, because there's a lot of question and concern about whether this is needed and whether this will be helpful or burdensome. And this included conversation yesterday afternoon with Technical Advisory Committee. I hold their feedback in high regard. Their concern has become my concern in terms of the ability of this to produce the intended results. But so from the TAC, the main issues that we've heard are one, a question of TRPC as a convener for this, especially when it comes to construction related projects, an understanding or a recognition that TRPC doesn't have staff that do construction projects and doesn't have staff that manage construction projects. And so TAC had questions of how, helping TRPC to prepare these applications of projects that they know the ins and outs of at the jurisdiction level. To have TRPC do that could be more work for our local jurisdictions rather than being helpful. They also talked about the effort involved in these applications, and that many of them require specific pieces of information. So as an example, City of Lacey recently put in a grant application where the city had to invest $65,000 to complete some of the work, like a cost benefit analysis that's required for many of these federal opportunities. And so that also raised question with TAC of if we were looking at packaging together multiple jurisdictions, who's going to pay for those things like the $65,000 that are needed just to do a grant application? And if those are related to construction, again, is TRPC staff the right place to have these things? There was also a concern that this help would potentially favor urban over rural projects. And another important one was concern about if you had multiple jurisdictions, how are you going to do the federal agreement? And meaning who's going to be the person the entity that actually holds the money? And what happens if, let's just say, for example, we put a Lacey project together with an Olympia project, and the Lacey project ends up with gopher issues. What happens to the Olympia project? It potentially stalls and doesn't happen. So those are big challenges. So that is a lot of background to say there's been a lot of discussion over this. There is a high level of recognition that this is a once in a lifetime transformational sort of an opportunity. But there's serious questions as to whether hiring a staff person in TRPC is the right way to help address that. And so would like to open that up to discussion at this point. I'm not necessarily looking for a decision. I just think more. Oh, and I see Matt Unselman raised his hand, which would be awesome. Matt Unselman from the county is on the technical advisory committee and has provided some of this feedback. So that
really
would be
quickly, I just want to clarify, there is a note here asking for action, but we're just discussing.
Yeah,
correct?
because this has been an ongoing discussion, like I said, including yesterday. And so, yes, it asks for action, but
not today.
But I mean, if council is so moved, obviously council can take action. But not necessarily recommending action from the staff perspective, given some of the conversation.
Okay, great. And just to summarize, we're talking about sort of weighing the option of hiring a staff versus contracting out some of the work. There's no question that there will be work.
No,
It's
it's really more, now the question really is, should anything be done? If something should be done, Transportation Policy Board has recommended that we first look to see if we can hire a staff person before we consider a consultant. And the discussion there was about really having a dedicated resource that we also can kind of get trained up and ready to help out on this sort of work. But again, really the discussion right now is, should either of these options be considered or not doing this? Because
doing nothing is an option right now.
right, and just to note, doing nothing does not mean nothing gets done. Doing nothing means that the individual jurisdictions will continue to have their staff, working on grant applications, going after their priorities.
Great. Okay, so I do see we have Matt and Scott in the queue, and Matt, I think, is going to be sort of sharing on behalf of Commissioner Edwards, who had to step away. So go ahead, Matt, and then Scott, you're on deck.
Thank you. As Director Daly stated, TAC staff do have some strong concerns about combining multiple projects throughout the county into a single federal aid contract. We all know some of the hurdles, as Director Daly stated, frogs and spotted frogs or pocket gophers. So say you have 4 projects scattered throughout the county, and one of those projects identifies spotted frogs or pocket gophers or has a right-of-way issue. All 4 of those projects, their project delivery process has been compromised. So that would be extremely difficult to manage. The one way this would work is if there was a single regional project that was led by a single agency. But these transformational projects are much larger than any of the regional projects we have identified. And I think we still need to, as a region, identify what the goals and criteria should be for those regional projects. As we heard this morning, I think there's a lot of differences between what the priorities and criteria should be for regional projects, between the differences between urban and rural areas of the county. So I think that discussion has to happen before we can even consider going forward with this process. So with my county hat on and not my TAC hat on, I would recommend that we don't go forward with this.
Thank you, Matt. Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, more of a couple comments and question for clarity. It sounds like this recommendation developed out of a discussion around emerging opportunities. And it sounds like the feedback is mostly focused on the complications of coordinating across the jurisdictions and the level of information and detail and so on and bringing in. So I'm wondering if you've done a serious look at where the gaps are. So there was a comment earlier about the gaps in South County transportation planning, the smaller jurisdictions being able to leverage any kind of federal or tie into federal project funds, that coordination across multiple projects, multiple jurisdictions that Matt just raised. And I'm wondering if you've been able to dig into that detail and identify an area of leverage that it would be worth focusing this effort into. Does that make sense?
It does. And actually, there has been some discussion about that in terms of, we talked about Highway 507 earlier in the roundabouts outside of Yelm. There's been a lot of work done on Highway 507, Main Street 507, and then also as we go into Highway 12, as you go to Rochester Grand Mound. And so one of the things that we've talked about is that we could package some of the recommendations. And I'll remind council that we had a legislative priority the session before last, which was, if I remember right, 20.5 or 22.5 million of projects in the South County. We would be looking at something like that to bundle up some of those Main Street 507, potentially Rochester Grand Mound sort of projects into something that talks about rural connectivity. That's an example of the kind of idea that had been talked about. And now the TAC has brought up substantial questions about the feasibility of an idea like that.
Go ahead, Clark.
Thank you. So transformational is one of my favorite words in this planning world. So I'm really glad to hear this. And I heard from the Transportation Policy Board, South County Main Street, like 507 and Highway 12 kinds of ideas. And then the possibility of bundling together across the region, the human-powered transportation network of trails and paths, because each of those projects alone are not the kinds of dollar amounts that this would bring us to. And I so much appreciate the work of our city staff and of all the TAC folks, but I think that when your first lens is steady, reliable delivery and maintenance of the existing infrastructure, it's harder to imagine the transformation, and that's the job of the TPB and the council, is to urge taking a chance on going big and doing some really difficult regional collaboration in order to achieve transformation. These are both the South County streets and the trail network have been on the wish list since I got here, and it's just been extremely difficult to find pockets of funding and a way to coordinate across jurisdictions to get big enough. So anyhow, I'm very excited about these, and I would urge that we move forward when the time's right, maybe at the next meeting.
Thank you, Clark. Are there any other questions or contributions to the discussion?
Not seeing any, so.
One that we haven't heard from. Nobody else? Not that I don't want John to make a comment, but I want to leave it. I know it's like, we call this the teacher wait time. Like we can just wait and see if anybody wants. So you all will consider whether there's something you would like to share, and then John will share with us right now.
Okay. One of the things that I'm also on the Transportation Policy Board, and one of the things that I brought up at the meeting, to bring somebody on is going to be very important no matter how this all flushes out. And the reason for it is you look at North County and you look at South County, and the geography is completely different. One of the things that I said that we need to consider when we bring somebody on is somebody that actually understands South County, as opposed to, let's say, parametrics who understands North County very well, but hardly ever does any work in South County. We need somebody that can cross those jurisdictional lines, that imaginary barrier that says, okay, you guys are South County, you guys are North County, because there are major differences. And I'm ashamed that I have to admit that back in 1996, when I first became a councilman, I did not understand the differences between North and South County. Representing, it took me about 6 months, 8 months before it started to actually appear. There are real mental shifts from people that live in North Thurston County to those that live in South County. It's what they want that makes everything so different. The people in South County really want to have that 5-acre, 20-acre piece of property with one house, maybe a second house for their kids. Where in North County, you guys all want to live together, close together, apartments, smaller lots, so you don't have to use the lawnmower as much. Sounds funny, but this are the things that I've learned, and I've been here a long, long time now. Was it 20 some odd years? And then I'm old. But these are the things that I brought up at the meeting. If we can find somebody that understands that shift and can see the difference and can pick up on the differences between projects that are needed in North Thurston County and the projects that are needed in South Thurston County, without crossing those intangible lines that might get people angry with you, that's something that I think we need. What was his name? Now I can't think of his name. It was on the tip of my tongue. But we had a planner just before Katrina that used to work quite a bit with South Thurston County, Tenino, Rochester, all in that area, and came up with different plans. One of the things was possibly a roundabout in Tenino. I don't like them, but that's a whole different story. So we've got some things Freddie Vander. If you guys remember Freddie Vander, the guy was really good. I didn't always like some of the stuff that he was presenting, but he was good at what he was doing. And that's what we need. We need that central person that everybody can go to and they can look it up real quick. Oh, yep, this is why you can't do this, or this is why this might be a good idea. We don't have really that much of centralization anymore. And I hate centralized government just as much as a lot of other stuff like traffic circles. But in this case, that is an important part so that a lot of the transportation issues that we have can be addressed and move forward on. Because everybody here knows that from Bucota, Tenino, Rochester, and Rainier, we don't qualify for hardly anything as far as federal funds go. With all this money coming in, we may be able to find with that one central person what we can actually do in South Thurston County. And if we can have somebody like that, that's going to be well worth the money. Never mind everything that they can do up here in North Thurston County. Those are the things that I brought up, and when the Transportation Policy Board decided that it was a good idea to go ahead and move forward with it. Just something for you guys to consider.
Thanks, John. Are there any other things that people would like to contribute to the conversation? Doesn't sound like
Sure.
anyone's ready to like take action today. I have a thought, but I also want to wait and see. It gives the teacher wait time. See if anybody. Eileen, yes, go ahead.
Well, listening to this and then reading the document that Mark was part of our packet, I realize it's a suggestion, but I'm trying to find something that's compelling there, that there's a real reason to do this, because I see the pros and cons and all, but is 100,000 even going to make a difference? This kind of funding, just and the strategic part of it, trying to find somebody, the timing of it, who's going to do this type of work. I just have questions about the implementation part of it too, but also just looking at where's the compelling need for this? I just would like to see a little bit more information on that. So.
Take a ride to South Thurston County.
Anyone else? Well, I think here's what I will contribute. I'm going to be a little kind of everywhere. I like roundabouts, John. I also like living close to people. But I also agree that it can be really challenging for smaller jurisdictions, including school districts, to utilize federal funds that are really designed for things like walking routes to school. I mean, how many times have I feel like that's all Paul Brewster and I ever talk about is how can we figure out how to bundle these projects together so we can use them for the things that our community members say they want, whether they live in very rural areas or in more urban areas, which is easily getting safely and in a healthy way to the places they need to go. And I think that there's a potential for us to do some really great collaboration, thinking about what those big projects would be. And luckily for us, we did a lot of really good work on our mission, vision, and values last year. And the vision is to create a model of sustainability and livability, and a big scale transportation project that improves both sustainability and livability for people everywhere in the county seems like something that might help us accomplish part of that vision. So, but I also want to just sort of like lift up what Matt said, which is that we don't have universal agreement on what the things would do, what kinds of things would create livability and sustainability in lots of different places. And so I'm of the opinion that we don't say no, but we don't say yes right now, but we do some thinking about what does sustainability and livability mean for the folks who we're here to represent.
May I try one more piece on for size to see?
Well,
because I'm also looking as we continue this conversation, maybe how can we narrow it to get a little closer to a decision. And I heard the suggestion that there might be a couple of places like trail connectivity and trail maintenance and such that folks could see some potential regional benefit in looking at it through that lens. And for South County, the Highway 507, 512, sort of Main Street 507, and the work program, the sub-area plans for Grand Mound, Rochester, et cetera. Those are where I heard some level of, I can see the benefit in that. So I'd like to kind of also provide that to Transportation Policy Board if people agree that there may be some specific areas where support would be necessary or helpful, not this just kind of carte blanche. Does that resonate with people?
Let's look and see what people's reactions are. Does that feel like a good sort of path forward right now? Some nods.
And some not. All right, I will bring that to Policy Board and see what their discussion is like. Bring back this feedback, including that.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
That was a great conversation. And I love that it felt like it fed into all that work we did last summer around mission, vision, and values. We are better together.
That's right.
roundabouts and all, or not. All right.
Way back when, and we actually got an award for that. Nobody else in the country did.
Well, we'll have to revisit that vision. Okay, so that takes us to outside committee assignment. Normally this is Helen. I don't see Helen, but I think that Meredith Pinto is the alternate. Do we have a written report from Helen?
Not that I'm
Right,
aware of.
okay. Meredith Pinto, do you have anything? Were you able to attend or?
I don't, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just didn't want to assume that you and Helen hadn't connected about that. So hopefully we'll get a robust update next time. And that takes us to executive director's report.
There are a couple of things that I want to highlight, some of them again, I guess. Household travel survey, that is still ongoing. We are still looking for folks to complete that survey. Martin Way open house that I talked about, online open house. It's open till June 6th. Really encourage people to take a look at that. And I also mentioned the hazard mitigation survey, also available from our webpage, that's open through July 31st to get public input on hazards and mitigation in our region. That's what I have.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, that brings us to member check-in. So this is the time when folks can share like a takeaway from the meeting that really resonated with them. They're excited to bring back to their community, or also something that you would like to share out for the benefit of all. I will start and just say I'm excited to share out that we have this countywide bicycle connectivity strategy on the which the contingency project list. That's very exciting, very relevant for many of the families in our school district. And I would love to share out to you all that our application for student representatives to the Olympia School Board is currently open. We will seat one student from each one of our high school enrolling school programs. And so if you know students who would like to get some experience on local government and have some strong feelings about what should be happening in school, I hope you will encourage them to put in an application. And I see Robin in the queue, so we'll go with Robin first.
Thanks, Hillary. Just my quick report out. I wanted to share that TRPC staff got me when I parked at the park and ride. I got a card for filling out the South Sound travel study. So I just wanted to say good job, folks that are putting those out on people's dashes. So I'll fill it out because I was parking in the park and ride. Lacey is also recruiting for our Lacey Youth Council. So similar to what Hillary shared, for next year, we're hoping to get some more young people from North Thurston schools to sign up and be a part of our Lacey Youth Council. And those representatives serve on some of our boards in Lacey. And finally, I wanted to agree with some others that say, I'm not tired of hearing about the I-5 Tumwater to Mounts Road project because it's so incredibly important to our region. So Mark, don't feel like you're presenting the same information over and over again and we're getting tired of it. It's too important for us to let it rest. So thank you for that presentation.
Glad to hear. Thank you.
Just add some dramatic
Thank you,
music.
Robin. Is there anyone else who would like to share from their jurisdiction or, oh, Barbie, go ahead.
This isn't really sharing from my jurisdiction, but four, part of the meeting came in person, and I'm wondering, we should probably reconsider the hybrid frequency of in-person meetings, or whether we're doing online, but we should have a plan for reconsidering this.
Yeah, so yes, we'll send out a survey because here's the, I'm wondering as staff perspective, whether we should look at every other month being in person or quarterly in person, or do we want to consider going fully remote? Just from a staff perspective, the hybrid is definitely more work. And so if we're going to have pretty limited in-person involvement, it would be good to look at whether that's necessary or not.
I confess I honestly missed that there was an in-person option. My calendar appointment on my calendar still says meetings are only remote.
Oh,
So I missed it.
No, thank you for that. Obviously, we missed that in the template, so we'll take a look at that.
Thanks, Robin. Yeah, I think it'd be great to just ask people how they're feeling. It's one of those things where, you know, I think when we decided to shift to in-person in May, everybody was enthusiastic, and then, you know, we got hit
Omicron
by
point two.
Omicron 2.0, and some of us were COVID positive for the last meeting, so this is my first one in person, but I think it's always good to check in, so.
Will do. Thank you.
It is really nice here, but I don't really want to encourage too many people to come in person, because then I would have to share the grapes. Okay, any other report outs or things they would like to share, appreciations? Hey, Cheryl.
Good morning. I would like to share out that I'm serving on the Lewis County Hazard Mitigation Steering Committee. So Mark, if there's any, you know, crossover or whatever, you can reach out to me. And then, of course, the Summer Library Program began June 1st and it goes to August 31st. And we do have deconstructed story picture books at story trails throughout the 5 counties Timberland serves, obviously including Thurston County. You can go to trl.org to see all these wonderful deconstructed picture books on the story trails. Thanks.
Thank you, Cheryl. Hey, Mel, go ahead.
Hey, just you know, we did our update of school walk routes. Thank you to Veronica from TRPC. One of the things that came out of it was the intersection at Ridgeview and Barnes. It was extremely worrisome to the Tumwater Hill Elementary principal because of several near misses. So we worked with the city of Tumwater and we're getting that a pedestrian crossing signal there and adding some sidewalks, probably about 2 years earlier than the city had planned by jointly funding that. So thank you to the city of Tumwater, and I think it's going to go in this before the start of the, September's school year. So thank you.
That is great news, Mel and Eileen. Yay. Any other contributions, reflections, appreciations?
Not seeing anybody, so yes, I do.
Oh, John. Go ahead, John.
I am the president of the Thurston County Fire Commissioners Association. And at our last meeting, Paul Bruce came down and talked to us about the hazard mitigation plan. So I just wanted to make sure that I appreciate what Mark did for us, for what Paul did for us, excuse me. So thank you very much, Paul. I wanted everybody to know that you did this. I want to thank you again for coming out because it was what, 6 o'clock in the evening. By the time we got done, it was about midnight or so before you finally got, no, I'm kidding. But thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate you coming out for us. You can see his
Thank you,
picture.
John. He's there. Great. Thank you. Anyone else have anything they would like to share out, appreciations, or excited to take back to your community? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We have a meeting on July 1st, and if there's nothing further, then the meeting is adjourned. We'll see you all on July 1st.
It means like time and a half on July 4th.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.